Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2022 AT&T Byron Nelson. This is my preview show, followed up with a close eye on who we want to bet. Of course, my long shot that I always give you guys. Going to do a complete course breakdown. We have at least 1 year of history here. Also going to give you the skill set of players that we're going to want to look at that could do well at this venue. And also, we'll do a real quick recap on the Wells Fargo. And first off and foremost, thank you guys for stopping by. Let's go talk some golf. Okay, so real quick, let's talk a little bit about the Wells Fargo Championship. A little bit of a weak field compared to what we typically see when they have it at Quail Hollow. Right, we had a new course to look at. It was the TPC Potomac. And we also knew, well, getting into Wednesday timeframe, we knew we were going to have some weather. So I think what was kind of interesting is how this story kind of built, right? You had Jason Day come out and shoot 7 under day one. And I thought that was interesting. For whatever reason, it triggered my brain. And I tweeted this out that the previous year, right, you have Phil Mickelson out of nowhere, shoots 7 under at Quail Hollow to lead. And then I think by Sunday, I think he was 7 over. So it gave us a little glimpse of what maybe could happen at the PGA Championship, but did not tie things together, even with his couple wins on the Champions Tour previously. It was probably one of those most shocking wins from what we do analyst perspective. But anyways, back to, this was after round 2, what you're looking at here. And as I mentioned, Jason Day had 2 strong rounds. I personally believe that by the 3rd day with the cold weather, that his back started to affect him. I mean, it was such a dramatic swing of how he was hitting the ball from day 1 and 2 to day 3. And day 2 was no picnic. I mean, it was, crazy wet, windy, except for the first day is decent playing conditions. The rest of the weather was pretty rough on these guys. Of course, Max, who I always, is one of my top 5 guys on my list that I, really like and like to play, and have followed his career all the way through. So even though I did not bet Max because his odds, I was so used to it. If you've been with me for a while, and we'll talk a little bit about this before we get off this about Max Homa and the upcoming PGA Championship. But, I always like to bet Max. Typically, you get really good numbers on him, but this field was so weak. And, of course, he's been in pretty good form with his win at Fortinet and, where he's had his finishes that, if I remember correctly, he was like 20-1. And if you guys also know, I typically do not bet on guys that low on golf when it comes to the betting side. Anyways, I also had Luke List was one of my picks. That came in on my cheapies, right? I mean, he was, I think, so underrated from an odds perspective. I bet him at 130-1. For a little bit there, it looked like, we had a chance, and then it kind of fell apart towards the end. Also, I think he was 7,100 from a pricing perspective, and I told you guys I was putting him in my cheapies, even though typically that's 7,000 below. So that was a nice John Hahn, which is really interesting. Both of his wins, like Max, have come at Riviera and Quail Hollow. So just kind of a interesting thing there. Denny McCarthy, I talked to you guys about that, of course, on the Before the Lock show, just stating that he was local, had, some past experience pre redesign and post redesign. And, but I just didn't think Denny, his ball striking game could carry him, and as we saw, it did start to fall apart towards the end. Kurt Kitayama, he showed up quite a bit in the models, was not one of my picks, but was showing up because he has been ball striking so well. It's got the length. Of course, Keegan down there was one of my picks. That was kind of a tough pick, right? He was priced pretty high on a DFS perspective. But when you looked at the field and saw, what Keegan's recent form, plus what he does very well, was just hoping that the putter would do well, and it did. And, of course, he had a chance to win the thing. So that was kind of, the first couple rounds. And then, as we know, the rain and the weather came. And I knew some weather was coming, but I had no clue it was going to be this. And it was amazing that, I was expecting definitely delays in round 2 and round 3, and it didn't happen. So that was a positive. But what was kind of interesting here, if you see, from the first round to the second round, the difference in scoring was plus 394 strokes. That's crazy. Or I'm sorry, 458 strokes. You can see here, highest increase on tour season. It was a tough course. I mean, what I kind of thought, I think still the Molinari 21 under was just a freak that, from how he was hitting the irons and putting to win that by 8 strokes. And then, of course, we knew the previous year, pretty weak field, but 7 under won it. I think this course, if you took away the weather and just gave it like the normal winds, would probably play low teens. I think 12, 13 under, 14 under maybe, if you just, like I said, did not have these conditions. But we don't know, and we probably will maybe never know unless they start hosting a different tournament there. And then, of course, congrats to Max Homa, 4th career victory. Of course, 2 wins now at the Wells Fargo on total different courses. I think he's projected to move into 6 of the FedEx Cup. And what I wanted to bring up about Max was I was very interested this morning around 7:30 a.m. Eastern. It kind of dawned on me, like, I wonder what his odds are at the PGA Championship, just because he has a terrible track record in the majors. And there was no respect. He was still on DraftKings Sportsbook. They were offering 100-1. So I got on that and smashed it. Now, do I think for sure Max Homa is going to win the PGA? No, but the value of getting him at 100-1 when they were offering like Thomas Peters, Lee Westwood, I mean, there was guys with better odds above him that wouldn't have a shot in hell in winning. And so then literally I was actually thinking about putting a few more bucks on it. And I went back within an hour and it was down to 65-1. So I think a lot of people also were curious on, did they move him? And it took him a while on DraftKings Sportsbook. I think on PointsBet, last I saw, you could still get him 80-1. So it's up to you. I think it's his short game is still a weakness, and it's something that he worked on before even this tournament. He's going to keep working on. But his ball striking, his demeanor, I think where he's at in his game. Also, he's got 3 wins in his last 16 months. I mean, he's, you look at the other guys that have got 2 wins, Sam Burns, Hideki Matsuyama, of course, Scheffler. I mean, he's up there with those guys, and you're getting nowhere near those odds for the PGA Championship, or even maybe you look at him for the Open or the US Open. Maybe the Open's the best fit for him. So anyways, just kind of interesting on that. Look at some stroke gain data now. What I tweeted out, and of course, if you guys know that I had some really nice top 5 picks. So I had in my top 5, I remember correctly, of course, Homa, Young, Bradley, and Corey Connors and Russ Henley. Corey Connors and Russ Henley, kind of killed us. When I think of both those guys, they do not play well for whatever reason in cold, windy, wet conditions. They are not mutters. You give those guys nice, sunny, conditions, and they're gonna go low. Hopefully, maybe even what's coming up here. So, funny enough, Fitzpatrick, when I made my top 15, of course, I did it on Tuesday, did not see the weather to that event. But of course, come Wednesday, I brought him up, and also I played him a little bit, or quite a bit in Showdown, but also a little bit in my, the DFS for the 4-day event. And I probably would have swapped out maybe Connors. I probably would have stuck with Russ maybe. It would have been one of those guys that came out. Fitzpatrick would have won. That was one, I think, the better opportunities for Fitzpatrick to get a win. He is never, I don't think, going to win a tournament that goes 18, 20 under. It's just not going to happen. He can't score like that, but he can grind it out. McIlroy, right, came right out of the gate and then had like a double bogey. I think he ended up 3 under the first day. I think on Saturday, I bet him live. I think it was Saturday. They were offering 60-1, and this was before Saturday started. And I thought, hey, this is far from over. And Rory did make a charge, had a chance there to compete and get back in it. Lanto, I think, is interesting. He's had some really good Sundays, especially under bad conditions. I think he's an interesting look, impossible bet and play for the event we got coming up, the AT&T Byron Nelson. Aniban Lahiri, I should have stuck with him. I picked him the week before. I didn't go with him because he didn't have the length. I knew he could keep it in play, and also great short game, great putting, good irons. So also someone to keep it in the back of your mind. Stefan Jaeger, he killed it on the Corn Ferry and has struggled making the transition for whatever reason. And this is not his first time in the PGA. He lost his card, had to go back. He gained it, but like I said, he was killing it in the Corn Ferry. And he's had some really nice Sundays. So, again, someone to look at. Brian Harman, solid round. Mackenzie Hughes, Shank. Stuart Sink, I'm a little upset at myself. I looked at him and I brought him up and just said if he would have had a little better showing at the RBC, right, he just made the cut on the number. He had to make a pretty decent putt to make the cut at RBC. But his game from a ball striking perspective, interested me. What I've seen with his putter lately, it did not, and that was why I did not go with him. And of course, he had maybe the best round on Sunday. I think he shot 5 under. James Honnigan, we already talked about, and then JT Poston been playing some solid golf. And then the last guy I'll bring up is Cameron Young. This guy really came out of the scene for probably all of us at the Genesis. But I just thought it was interesting, this graphic they showed on the Golf Channel, starting at 2002, where he ranked at 1,500 at 2021, 500, and then after the Genesis, because of that field, move all the way to 53rd. And then entering the week, last week to Quail Hollow, is at 43. Now we're expecting him to be somewhere in the 30s. This guy is going to be, I think, very interesting between Will Z and Cameron Young, who gets the win, because these guys are both great talents. And I think Cameron Young, when it comes to the putting and chipping, I would rather have Cameron Young. But, I'd probably want Will Z for the iron. So that's the one area Cameron Young I don't think it's as good. I think he's got the length, can get a little wayward off the tee, but, pretty solid. He's great ball striking from a distance. I think you get him in that 150 less, I would think like a Will Z is a little better. So anyways, definitely keeping an eye on him. He is not in the field and is not also not in the PGA that I saw, because I was interested in betting him. Okay, I think that's enough about the Wells Fargo. The good news is, I think out of the 20 picks I had, I believe, let me think about this, I think 12 or 13 made it all the way through. But I hit, like I said, my top 5 was awesome. It was the middle in the end that could have definitely, I think, Keith Mitchell missing a cut, Straka missed a cut. I think I picked Straka. I had Killer Keith. I looked at Vegas quite a bit, and I wish maybe I wouldn't have made that switch, but Killer Keith was, at the time, better, just playing better golf. Okay, let's switch and go and talk about the AT&T Byron Nelson. Of course, we're heading over to Texas. We have a crazy good field to play this event. It's kind of amazing, but I think a lot of guys, maybe a little bit of the wire, but I think it was a lot what they knew about that course. And because, of course, the PGA is also going to be held in Texas, that they were like, you know what, we'll use, the AT&T Byron Nelson for the warm-up. And so that's why we have an amazing field to play this event. Of course, the previous year we have data, but it was not held in 2020. And we are going back to TPC Craig Ranch, which was built in, I was supposed to say 2004. And your architect is Tom Weiskopf. This is a par 72, and it is kind of a big boy course. It's over 7,400 yards, 7,468 to be exact. Your fairways are Zoysia, and your rough is actually, and this is going off last year's information. For whatever reason, they have not released the superintendent, information that we usually get. So I'm going off, but I don't think, from the scorecard, from a distance, nothing's changed. But last year was 2.5-inch Bermuda rough. And so you got kind of what a mix. And then you've got bent grass greens. They do run pretty fast, and they are very large, almost some of the largest greens on tour. And they do have a bit of slope. So putting definitely does come into play here. We are at another complete large player field at 156 players maxed out. And, of course, cut T65, which I'm sure you guys felt as I did. It was hard to get 6 to 6 through. And historical cut line was 5 under last year. That's what I'm using. This was held at Trinity Forest 4 years prior, and then a couple other different courses. So it's bounced around quite a bit. I already mentioned large greens. They come in around 6,700 square feet. If you think of like Kapalua, which I think is 7,000, that's, kind of the largest greens we see. Lots of sand, 83 sand bunkers, and then you've got 4 water hazards. But one of these water hazards, this Rolette Creek, runs through 14 different holes. So can come into play. So 13 holes have water on them that can come into play. I already mentioned Stimpmeter is running around 11.5. So that's pretty fast. It's not lightning, but it's fast. And the course defense, I mentioned the water, that Rolette Creek, and you got quite a bit of trees. But really, this course is very gettable. It's wide open fairways pretty much, but there is some trees you could get in trouble. You've got to get pretty wayward. There is some sand. And really what caused any defense last year was the wind. And if I remember correctly, on Sunday, I think it rained the whole event. It was kind of a misty, not a crazy rain, but just enough to, kind of bother guys. And it's funny, last year I was on Sung Kang because this is his home course. This is where he practices, and he was the champion of the 2019, which was not held here. That was at Trinity Forest. So I was pretty pumped. I bet him again. I think he's around 250 to 1. And, I put in there, I'll be targeting, of course, some locals, Texans, Aussies, South Africans. I'll do well. Charles Schwartzel. Funny enough, I don't even know if I played him, but he had a really good run here last year. Okay, let's go look at this course. So, not the best graphic, but it'll work for what we need to do. We start at 1. You can see here, it looks like we're running this way. So, that creek, this is that Rolette Creek. You can see I mentioned it runs through the whole course. And, could come into play on 1. 2, you got really nothing, to speak of. 3, it runs and cuts through between the green and the fairway. So definitely going to have to hit a position shot to come across. You got some long par 3s on here. We'll talk about a little more. I guess it, could come into play on 5. You have to get really wayward. 6, I wouldn't, worry about. It's just a ton of sand. Looks like 7, you got to carry it. 8, nothing really to speak about. And then let's jump over to 9. Looks like it runs along, and then you got to cross it to get to the green over here. Kind of, this course reminds me a bit of what we just saw at TPC Potomac. And then also, if you've seen Southern Hills, they've got a little bit of this where they've got some creeks running through. At least they used to, as far as I remember. 10, nothing. 17, I'm just going to jump to. That's that they built like at the Waste Management number. Oh, geez, I'm going to forget now. Was it 12 or 16? The par 3 stadium kind of seating. It's 125 yards. So they did that same thing here, try to reduplicate it at 17. Then you got this pond over here that kind of gets involved on 14. If you hook it, you got it on this. I think it's a par 3 on 15. And then 16, you got another little pond here out the gate, but that should be no issues. I'd say it's about it. And you can kind of see 11, 12, and 13. Looks like it gets a little tighter, a little more trees. To give you a little visual aspect, this would be, I'm going to just make sure I'm correct. Yeah, so this is the lake that comes into play on 14 and 15. And then you could see that Rolette Creek that kind of runs through the course. And again, pretty wide fairways, but there is trees. And of course, sand is already mentioned. I threw this in here. I had it from last year. Of course, we're in Texas. There are some guys that do very well in Texas. Of course, first one we think of is Jordan Spieth. So one of the top performers since 2010. You can see scored a par, rounds into 60, inside the top 10, rounds of 5 under or better, total birdies 3rd, but 1st in all the other categories. And then a number of rounds played that was in the field. I don't know if Charlie Hoffman, I didn't even look, is in this field, but we all know he's been trash. He had one good round at the Waste Management. I think he might have had one more good round, but he's been really bad. Matt Kuchar had a good showing here last year. I believe he was like top 5, but he's got, tons of low rounds here. Ryan Palmer, right, local. His game hasn't been as good either. Then, of course, Jordan Spieth, I just remember off the top of my head, a couple of eagles he made with some crazy putts. I remember, I think on the first round on number 18, he made a really long eagle putt. So long story short, what I'm getting to is, of course, we know Jordan has been really doing well with the ball striking. It's what is that putter going to do? If it's hot, it has a really good chance of winning this thing. All right, so we take a real quick look at the scorecard just so you can get an understanding of how this course also plays from a difficult. So it's not a gentle handshake starting on number 1. That's from at least last year. It was a number 4th ranked handicap hole. So the first 4 holes, it's tougher. I think the course defense here honestly is the par 3s. There's some long par 4s, but you've got the standard 1, 2, 3. I just want to make sure. Yeah, 6 birdie opportunities, 6 bogey opportunities, but really there's some good eagle opportunities here. So you can see at number 5, good chance you can get an eagle, and also on 18. So I'm going to definitely have that plugged into my model, and we'll talk more about that. But yeah, really nothing crazy. I mean, 18, it's kind of interesting. I like that it's a par 5 because you could have a swing, a 2-shot swing there if somebody makes an eagle. You've got the number 17th here, another par 5. But you got your 4 par 5s. Pretty standard. If I remember, you got your 4 par 3s. Just want to verify that. And then you should have your 10 par 4s. So that's very status quo. And then, of course, I pulled the official scorecard just to check. I'm always looking to see if they've made any changes since the previous year. And all the yardages are exact. So this information here we're looking at is good. All right, so how do you win the AT&T Byron Nelson? What are the player skill sets that I'm looking at from a stroke gain analysis, and then I rank them? No shocker, almost identical to what I had last weekend at the Wells Fargo. A pro shows up is the number one, thing you need to do well here, which is very typical. Sometimes you get outliers where maybe around the green or, maybe it's the putter, whatever it is. But approach is number one. Ball striking shows up. And then, of course, you need guys that can get some distance here. It is a longer track. Take advantages of these par fives. And then we're looking for guys that get hot with the putter. That's a little harder to figure out. If you knew that, you would be rich. And the number one proximity to the pin, funny enough, this is kind of unique. I don't know if it's because of so many guys going for it on these par fives or, there is some long par fours, but 200 plus shows up almost 35% of the time. The other one, which I didn't put in here because it was pretty low, but that stands out above and beyond the courses they typically play, is at below 75 yards. So a lot of shots, 50 yards, 40 yards, but that was like 6-7%. You really got to take advantage of these par fives. This is a bit of a putting contest. It is going to be a go low unless, weather hits, but I did check. We are supposed to have some wind right now. It's stating, I think, on Thursday or Friday. Early in the tournament, they are going to get some wind, up in the 20s for gusts. But other than that, it looks like it's going to be pretty nice. But like I said, you've got 3 par 5s, 550 to 600. And then you've got one that's pretty short, a little over 500 yards. A defense for this course is, like I said, it's got 5 long par 4s, 450 to 500. Again, that's where I'd want the distance. And then these long par 3s, 200 to 225. Then they got one that's a little less. So I'll plug that in the model. I want guys that can score. Eagles, birdies. I probably also need to plug in birdie or better opportunities. I just kind of thought of that. Didn't put that in the model, but I'll rerun it tomorrow with that so you guys can see some things. But it's not a huge thing. This will flush out the guys that I want. Okay, so typically I do pull up at least the last 2 or 3 years of past winners. But because we only have 1 year of data, I'm just going to show you, who the guys that did well so you can see that and also what they did well. And also it kind of verifies the model that I built. And of course, as I mentioned, the thing, if you look at the top 5 guys, top 5 performers, they crushed it with their irons. And, most of them, and I brought in even Scott Stallings, who had a crazy Sunday. And I bet also, I recommend I think he's due for a good showing here. Gained quite a bit, almost 7 strokes, 8 strokes, 2.7, 2.1, and 4.5 to KH Lee, which typically is not the best putter. And then your kind of outlier with Sam Burns, but he just crushed it with his irons and off the tees where, and around the green. Where you can see these guys around the green did not gain. So I didn't even plug in around the green into my model this time. And then, of course, the tee ball, you can see where Patty Kazire also had a really good Sunday. And as you guys know, he's kind of my, broke back betting pick, my FOMO bet. Of course, I've already bet him. I believe I've got it in my bet, so we'll talk about that. But anyways, you can just see some of the guys. So you got to go through this list, and the field is better this time through. But, you had a Burns, you had Berger, who had a nice Sunday too. So, good ball strikers, really good putters. Cashley is actually a good ball striker. Like I said, typically the putter does not fire. Scott Stallings got distance. So you got kind of a mixed bag here. I mean, Burns has got distance. KH Lee's got a bit of distance. Then you get like here, Jordan Spieth, Seamus Power. Those guys I kind of clump as in, kind of all around good set, but I'd say Power, well, Spieth in his heyday with the putter can get crazy, but you can see Seamus Power gain almost 3 strokes with the putter. Vegas distance, Doc Redman, a great ball striker. Typically a terrible putter, but you can see he gained almost 3 strokes with the putter. And then same with Bramlett here. Crazy off the tee, but fired with the irons and actually had a good putting round, where typically he's a bad putter. So if you went off this specifically, it'd just be like, go with the best ball strikers, hope for the putter, is what this tells you. But it is one sample of data. And of course, the field is, even better this year, much better. All right, so if I just go and take recent form, and then we'll talk about the model that I built. Like I said, I might add in birdie or better is one thing that I did not put in that I think I might want to know. I weighted heavily approach at 20%, ball striking at 15, off the tee at 15. So if you really, that's almost, ball striking is kind of taking a piece of both of those. So it's pretty heavily weighted from tee to green. And so that's what 50% of the model weighted is on that aspect. And then I just a little bit on putting because it's so hard to figure out. But I'm going to look at guys that do well on bit and pass. I think sometimes makes you feel a little better. That proximity 200 plus, because it's so high, I put that at 10%, and then we need to get gain strokes on these par fives that are 550 to 600. I put that at 5%. Those long par threes, the 5 par fours, 450 to 500, I put that at 5%. And then I weighted eagles and birdies at 10% each because we need guys that can score. That flushed this out. And funny enough, over the last 3 tournaments or 12 rounds, and this is including Wells Fargo, Kurt Kitayama came up number 1. And of course, I bet him already. I think I've got him on here, but I'll talk to you about it. I think he's 130 to 1. And if you want to stick with the Asian theme as winners, right? You got Sung Kang, who won in 2019. You got K.H. Lee. Why not Kurt Kitayama? And it's nice odds. Of course, then JT, Vegas, Burns, Zalatoris is up there. CT Pan been playing great golf. I mentioned Lanto's been showing up. Aaron Wise actually has won. I think this was his only win on tour, and it was a while back. I'm going to forget the day. It was 2016 or 2018. He won the AT&T Byron Nelson on a total different course. I believe it was at Trinity Forest. And you got Mito, Piera, Spieth, McNeely. Got Brandon Wu showing up. DJ, JJ Spawn, who I believe going into... I know he led the first round, JJ Spawn. Of course, he's got the win here not too long ago. And I'm just trying to think where he ended up. I think he ended up pretty decent. I'm just bringing it up because he's been playing really good golf. So we know he's pretty comfortable at this track. And then Brian Harmon, who had a pretty good showing at Wells Fargo we just saw. All right, it is so small of history at this course. I mentioned it's a 1-year data sample. You can see all these guys have 4 rounds. But I wanted to pull this up against my model just to see who came up on this. And Sam Burns was number 1, who led the tournament going into Sunday. I don't know if he was wire to wire for the 54. I think he was tied for first round 1. I think he led round 2. And then he led going into Sunday and struggled. I think he stumbled right off the blocks, but made a bit of a comeback. So that's good. That flushed him out. Bramlett, right, was top 10. Schwartzel top 10. K.H. Lee won it. All these guys. Carlos Ortiz, I don't remember him up there, or Lee Westwood, but most of these guys were all up on the board. Patty Gazire. So what I'm saying is, for me, it was just, this will validate what I'm looking at from a model perspective and say, hey, you're on the right path. But this is the guys, of course, no shocker, that have a good history here because we've had one event and they did well here. All right, if you want to know who are the best ball strikers, again, looking at recent form, and I apologize, but Fantasy National did not have DraftKings pricing up yet or odds when I did this. So it'll be in tomorrow's. But anyways, JT, number 1 ball striker over the past 3 tournaments he's played in. Willsey, I think JJ Spawn, that's very interesting. I mentioned Lanto, List, Kitayama, Spieth, Hadwin, playing good golf, CT Pan. Paul Barjon, actually, kind of made a little bit of rumbles, at least made the cut at the Wells Fargo. Wise, Vegas, Mito, Piera, and then Brandon Wu. This is interesting to me, is who's your best bent putters. And I always tell you guys who's the first guy that comes to my head that could do well here, not even looking at the field. And Jason Kokrak is the first guy that popped in my brain. Of course, he's got some wins on bent, and no shocker that he came up as the best bent putter. Kind of struggled early on this season. I feel like, and I haven't done a ton of analysis on him, but I feel like his game has gotten a little back to form. You got Snedeker, Alexander Noren, who's been playing good golf, had a good showing here last year. Bo Hosler, I think he was one of my picks. I'm pretty sure he was for the Wells Fargo, and I think he shot he was a disaster on both rounds. So I don't know what happened to Bo Hosler, but that did not work out. DJ, Seamus Power, the Shankmaster, he's been nipping for a win forever. Hughes, Adam Scott's in the field. You got Mitchell, Hammer and Hank. He also had a run there where, the lefty to have a win last summer. Ian Poulter, Scott Stallings, EVR. I did bet him. I think he's 100. He's 100. He's up there. He's around 100 to 1. Oh, and my recommendation while I'm thinking of it, just to bring it out again, if you are betting any guy that's like 30 or 40 to 1 or over, go to DraftKings Sportsbook has the higher odds, the best high odd guys. if you want to bet on guys that are like 30 to 1 and under, go check out PointsBet. They are giving you, on average, 5 to 10 points better in that range. So, just a side note. All right, proximity of the pins. I like doing this, especially when it's a heavy approach needed. And so, if you want to know, which I think this is very interesting, who's been leading over the last 3 tournaments, 12 rounds, with their irons in a complete approach? Johnny Vegas, which that's a little shocking to me, over JT. But data doesn't lie. So I also got a bet on him. I believe he's like 80 to 1. He has all the skill set to do well here. Again, it comes down to the putter. Same with JT. There's Kitayama, I told you already bet. Burnsy, Lipsky, who's been playing some solid golf. Believe he, like I always say, this DP World Tour, and then did a stint on the Corn, and kind of struggled. I would look at, he reminds me a lot of what Stefan Jaeger, had really good showing, the previous year in the Corn, and then kind of been struggling in the PGA, but have all of a sudden started to make a turnaround. You got Hadwin, Barjan, EVR again pops up, Spieth, Scotty Scheffler. Funny enough, he's like the first time it pops up in my model. It's kind of shocking to me, but it is what it is. And of course, we know Texas, and no reason why he can't go win his 5th tournament of the year. Will Z, Luke List, CT Pan, Brandon Woon, and Hideki on the bottom. Then what I wanted to look at was, again, who led from that proximity at 200 plus out. And then it kind of flips where you got Kitayama up top, Matsuyama, Tyler Duncan. Typically you can put a round or two together, especially round 1. Adam Scott Wise, Seth Reeves, the smother man, my guy, my ball striking master. Just learn how to chip and putt. He did make the weekend for us. Mito at Wells Fargo. Mito Piera, Will Z, CD Pan, Hayden Buckley, Matty Wallace, which has shown up for a round here or there lately, but can't put anything together. Killer Keith, who killed me literally at the Wells Fargo. Hudson Swafford, out of nowhere, shows up, and then DJ. All right, so from a comp course perspective, I don't think I got 2 ways I'm looking at this from a comp course perspective, right? We don't have a lot of courses that are 7,400 yards and bent. We just don't. Now, if you look at one-off tournaments like the PGA Championship, whatever, you're going to have more. But the number one that comes up is Wells Fargo. If you take the trees, distance, bent grass, of course at Quail. But then what I like to look at is more of the, how's the course play? It is in Texas. I think the Valero AT&T Oaks is a good, but it is Bermuda Greens. You've also got like CC of Houston or Memorial Park where they play the Houston Open. I think that's a good comp. And then if you need a scoring fest, you got, of course, the Waste Management and then Shriners. They are both Bermuda, but again, if they do well in these tracks, and it kind of seems like there's some crossover, they should do well here. And then, of course, I'm going to be also pulling in TPC Craig Ranch. With that said, if you take a larger sample, 6 tournaments or 24 rounds, and against these courses, you got Burns again, who pops up number 1. You got Bubba Watson, which is kind of interesting. Jordan Spieth, Thomas, Matsuyama. I mentioned Bubba's interesting because, right, he had that win almost over on the Saudi International. Harold Varner made that crazy putt to beat him. And has played pretty decent golf, I guess the best way to put it. Anyways, moving on. Carlos Ortiz shows up again. That would be probably his win at the Houston Open. And you got Kokrak, Desire, DJ, List, Wolf. We're going to talk about Matthew Wolf, Will Z, McNeely, Xander's in the field, and then Scott Piercy, who just randomly, I think he had a pretty decent round even at the Wells Fargo here recently. So, okay, so that gives you the guys that are coming up on the comparable courses the best. All right, so with all that information, let's talk about who I like betting. Now, I've actually made quite a few bets. I'm kind of due, and I kind of feel like even though this is a very strong field, that we could still get maybe someone that's a little longer shot. And why I say that is I also kind of feel like a lot of these guys wouldn't lose a lot of sleep if they don't make the cut here, that are just here. Would it be a bad thing? Like we saw this with Rory missed a cut. He even stated that it wasn't a bad thing. And that's the narrative I'm kind of going with. Maybe some of these top players are here to kick off a little bit of rust and more work on their game than they are worried about winning this tournament, where some of the hungry guys that need this win or a nice top 5, might be a little different. So that's a little bit of the narrative I'm going with. So with that said, right off the bat, again, from this betting side, these aren't the guys that I think are for sure the locks to win. I think they're good odds, and I like them to have a chance to win. I always state that. We're out to bat. I told you, Jason Kokrak, one of the first guys that I thought of that I wanted to bet. Just the way his game plays, the bent grass. Hopefully, it's a little better. Honestly, 45 to 1, you can get him 50 to 1 at points bet, but my money was already over in Draftkings, and so I was easier just to go ahead and bet it. For 5 points, I'll just take the 45 to 1. And of course, I wasn't going nuts, but that's kind of lower odds than I'd like to see Kokrak a little higher, especially in this field, but I don't know. I just have something in my mind that thinks that Kokrak could do very well here or even win this thing. So bet that one. Patty Kazire, right? This is where if I remember correctly, the Texas Swing, this was the start of his really good golf. He had like 2 or 3 tournaments. He almost won at the Charles Schwab here. So, yep, I'm jumping on that. Wish I could quit you, broke back pick, FOMO pick, whatever you want to call it. 100 to 1 to win. Matthew Neesmith, 131 to win. We're playing some really good golf. Right, he had the chance at it was one of the V's. It was either the Valero or the Valspar. I think it was Valspar, but neither here or there. Been playing good golf, great ball striker, and the putter has been decent. Aaron Wise, I mentioned, like I said, he has a win at the AT&T, not this course, but has been playing really good golf, been putting better, can go low. So I like him 55 to 1. And then my last bet that and like I said, I've got a few more than these, but these were kind of the top 5 that I thought I'd like to share with you guys. Kurt Kitayama, 130 to 1. Been playing amazing golf. If the putter goes, I see no reason why he can't contend to win. All right, so my long shot. I think you guys will find this one interesting. It's not a super long shot, but it is still a long shot. Even some of those that were up there were equal in odds. So typically I do like 200 over. This one I want to do because I think it's a little interesting. All right, so we're out the bat. He's 131 to win. I didn't even look at top 5 or top 10. I'm more curious about the win. He's a past winner. Actually, one of his first tournaments he's ever played in at the 3M Open. He can go low. He really does well at TPC Summerlin, where they play the Shriners. You see here he had an 18th in 2019. A second. So that when you see the Shriners, that is a putting fest. That is who can go low. Wingfoot came right behind DeChambeau, and then Rocket Mortgage also behind DeChambeau. That was on bent grass. The 3M Open's on bent grass. And to talk about that, where he's had some of his best putting outings has been on bent, the Rocket Mortgage, and the 3M Open a couple times. And I don't know if Wingfoot was bent. I don't remember now. Neither here. Oh, that wasn't Wingfoot. I take that back. I think that was Whistling Straits where he came out. I actually tweeted when he shocked me when he came out with that 5 under on day 1. He made the cut at the Wells Fargo. Had a pretty good showing. That was the last course in a million years under the game that I saw Matthew Wolff that I would have ever thought he would have came out and shot 5 under the first day. So that said, of course, Matthew Wolff, why not? I mean, this is a guy that can go low. He's actually a really good putter. And if he can just keep it in play, and he gets hot, he's got a chance to win this thing. I mean, it would not shock me one iota. Just see that little spark that he has right now, get a little confidence now. If you saw the tournament and we're listening, they talked to him and he said, hey, I'm not here to win. I'm here to, he's trying to just, I think, work on the mental part of his game and get the confidence back. And I told you guys, he's so, as his game goes, right? So if he starts off birdie, watch out. He starts off bogey, watch out. He could shoot an 80. I mean, he's had quite a few rounds in the 80s over the last, 5-6 tournaments. So hence why I was nowhere even near. I mean, from a pricing standpoint for DFS, he was cheap. I think he was 7,500, maybe even less, maybe like 7,100. And I took a long, hard look at it, but that course just did not. When I saw all the trouble that was there, I was terrified to play a Matthew Wolff. So anyways, with that said, that is my long shot. And that is my preview show for you guys. I hope that gets you a little excited to, put some money at the AT&T Byron Nelson, get you some ideas of who you might want to go with from a betting perspective or even from a DFS. If you guys would do me the honor, as always, click that like button, share this with anybody else. Become a subscriber if you're, for whatever reason, checking me out for the first time, or you've been watching me for a little while and just haven't signed up for our YouTube account. Please do, and click that subscribe button. The base is growing really nicely. I think we're, 1,400 subscribers, something like that right now. And as always, follow me on DFS Golf Guru and Twitter, even to ask me whatever questions you want. I've been using this as kind of a chat platform. So, of course, you got YouTube comments, which I check very often. and I respond very quickly. So a lot of the guys that we have communications back and forth. I apologize. There was one thing I forgot to talk about on the recap was, of course, Paul Casey withdrawing, right? And I talked a bit about that. I mean, I was nowhere near him. I think I had him in like a showdown lineup or something the first day. That was it. That hurt me. But there was one of you folks, and I forgot who it was now, who hit me and said, "Hey, I was watching the Golf Channel, saw an interview with him, and Paul Casey said, I didn't, I'm not playing in the pro-am, and I highly doubt I'll play tomorrow, or there's a chance I might not play tomorrow," something to that effect. And that's intel that I didn't see, but you guys saw. You shared with me. I tweeted it out. And so what I'm saying is, as a community, follow. I'm not saying not trying to push Twitter, but YouTube comments, whatever, anything you guys have, we all share. We're all going to get better, and we're still a pretty small community. So with that said, hey, let's all work together to put a few more bucks in each other's pocket. All right, guys, I will have my picks out for you guys tomorrow with all the analysis that you guys grown to love, I'm sure. Oh, and then on the one and done, a little exciting. Like I said, I actually last minute change. I didn't do it, but when I saw the weather, I went with Fitzpatrick, and now I'm I think 70th in the big Pat Mayo Challenge one and done. So working my way back up, guys. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully you guys are doing well on the one and done too. I mean, the picks that I gave you were still pretty good. Right. I think I had Max in there. I had Cameron Young, Corey Connors, Henley. I forget, but Fitzpatrick was not in there. Again, because I wasn't so much focused on the weather at that point. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Have a great day, and let's have a great AT&T Byron Nelson.